you had, I guess, a rock bottom experience as well. There was a point where, was this just after the financial crisis, where you were nearly $1 million in debt, and then you managed to claw your way out of it, bounce back, and now you've built an empire, and you've never looked back. Talk me through that.
Yeah, I've had a couple close to rock bottom experiences, but that one was a big one. Yeah, that was the GFC, the global financial crisis. And I'm just looking around me. I do have one. Yeah. Um, so in my 20s, I launched a national business magazine in my home country, Australia. Business magazines in Australia when I was growing up were really dry and they were really, really boring. And there was generally some stale, pale and male dude on the front cover, with dandruff on his shoulders wearing a bad suit. That was the nature of business magazines in Australia. And so I would have been, yikes, I would have been about 23. And I maybe 20. No, 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 I was older than that. I think I was about 23 when I had the idea. I think I was 26 when I went home to my parents' suburban home. And I said, Mum, Dad, I think I want to launch a national business magazine to rival the market leader in Australia, which is called BRW. I said, hey, Mum, hey, Dad, I want to move home so I can launch a national business magazine to rival BRW. And fortunately, my parents are reasonably open-minded. And my mum said, sure, if you can show me a business plan. If you can show me a business plan. So I went away and I wrote a business plan. Now, here's the cool thing. I'd never written about business plan before. I'd never even seen a business plan before, but neither had my mum. So, so, I presented my parents with this business plan. I think Dad had seen a couple before, but they went, okay, well, you're committed. And they let me move home and I launched this national business magazine in my home country, Australia. And I launched it with personal savings from the spare bedroom of the suburban home. My sister's old bedroom, it had love heart curtains and it still had the Wham posters on the cupboard doors. And I was launching a business magazine. I had a computer. I had what was called an ADSL connection at the time, which meant you could get internet, phone, and fax. And that was it. And during the day, I would write. No, during the day I would sell ads. During the day I'd sell ads. On the weekends, I'd write every article. And if you look at the early editions, there's articles that have with my mum as a byline, my friend Dave from primary school as a byline, my dog had a byline, Wolfgang, because you couldn't have a magazine with one guy had written all the articles. So I wrote the articles on the weekend. I sold advertising during the day. I did the admin and bookkeeping and the subscription stuff at night, but the phone would ring and because we were on newsstands, we were in airports, we were in Borders bookshops, if you can remember them. And yeah, I'd get a phone call and someone would say, oh, can I please speak to your subscriptions department? And I'd go, yeah, sure, not a problem. Subscriptions. and I did that for an entire year. And then we won we won best magazine launch of the year because we just come out of nowhere. It was, I had personal savings. Then that was the first edition, wiped out all my personal savings. I'll do the numbers for you, Ryan. I don't often talk about this, but I think that you'll find this interesting and your audience, I will too. But the first edition was going to cost $40,000 to produce. Magazines are expensive. And this is 20 years ago
Wow.
too.
Yeah.
It was going to cost $40,000 to produce. So what I did is I went, that's not a problem. I'll just get $40,000 worth of advertisers into it. So I went out and I hustled. And I sold, I can't remember I sold about $20,000 worth of ads. But I was still 20 grand short. But I had personal savings of $23,000, which I was going to, back in those days, that could be a deposit on an apartment or something like that. Not anymore. But anyway, and so I went, you know what? I can spend this money now because I'm young and I can always make this money back, but I'll never have an opportunity like this again. And I've never had an opportunity like this before. I'll never have one like this again. And you know what? Once the first edition's out, it's going to be super easy to sell advertising. So I dropped my money into it. Had $3,000 working capital on the $40,000, overhead. Got that edition out and then went out and hustled for ads on that one. Now, the second one, Ryan, did I make $40,000 worth of ads? Did I sell $40,000 worth of ads for the second edition? What do you think?
Is this where the story turns south? What happened?
28,000.
Okay.
And so I was short 12. I was still short 12. And, but however, I got a letter from the wonderful Visa company and it was offering me a $15,000 credit card because before that I was working a day job and I had a salary and they, in their database, I've got a fine salary. So I got this letter offering me a $15,000 credit card. So I signed up immediately. And that was $12,000 for the shortfall, and again, $3,000 working capital. Then the third edition broke even, and then the fourth edition doubled. So then I was like, all right, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm
fist bump for you, sir.
Fist bump, and I'm totally on my way. But the magazine came out, and there was a lot of buzz around it, and I won best magazine launch of the year. I think that you'll appreciate this too, Ryan. For subscriptions, I pulled together every business card I'd ever collected, every name that I'd ever collected. I went and because it was a startup entrepreneurship style magazine, the entrepreneur versus the venture capitalist. I went and I just went and grabbed email addresses from venture capital firms and what have you. There was no culture of real innovation and entrepreneurship and startup culture in Australia back then. We called it commercializing Australian innovation, dedicated to the commercialization of Australian innovation. Yeah, cheesy, huh? Because entrepreneur was a dirty word. Startup culture didn't exist. But you'll appreciate this. I pulled together a list of about 2,000 names. I sent a BCC email. And I got my first 150 subscribers that way. That was the beginning. Ran the ads. And it went and it just grew. It grew and grew for about 4.5 years. And I was named best small publisher in Australia twice. Which was amazing because I was a kid. And when you say small publisher in the days, it was absolutely a one-man show. And then I began to recruit people. I got it to about 14 people. And then it was 2008, 2009, and then that was the GFC. And the GFC was a big one. But that year was a perfect storm for magazines. And that's because Google started to roll out an ad platform that was measurable. Now, it had been doing that since about 2004, I think, but it really was building buzz, particularly in Australia at that time, 2008. So suddenly advertising could be measurable. But before that, you could run, you could have a big ad in a magazine and you'd charge 4,000, 10,000, whatever it was. And you'd say, oh, how did the ad go? And they'd go, I don't know. There was that saying, I know that half my advertising works. I just don't know which half. And then you'd go hit the squash court. But yeah, so that was the big one. That was the first big one. Suddenly advertising became measurable. Second thing is Steve Jobs launched these tablets. And not everyone had one, but the magazine industry was going, oh my, that's the future now. And so that became a big deal. And then, of course, the GFC hit, and the first thing that everybody did was they pulled back on their ads. And I remember in October 2008, I was going to say 2008, one of our advertisers reached out, I think it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they pulled back like $250,000 worth of ad spend. And this is, it was in a contract that like booked it, for the next year. And I'm like, well, you can't do that. And they're like swinging. And I was not very nice to the woman on the call. If you ever see this, if she sees this by accident, sorry, mate. But what I didn't realize is that Tracy had to fire like 18 of her team members that morning. So she doesn't give a shit about my $250,000 ad spend. She said just had to fire her team. And that was the vibe. People were like arriving at work, firing their team, slashing their ad spend. and it was going crazy. So that was October 2008, and that was pretty awful. And then by early 2009, it was really clear the writing was on the wall. And by then, one of these would cost about $100,000 to produce, just one edition. And there's a saying in magazines, if you want to make a small fortune in publishing, start with a big one. Because all you need is one edition where you don't sell enough ads to cover the cost, and you're down. Because you make barely any money from retail sales. You make barely any money from subscription sales. It all comes from the ads. That 80-90% comes from the ads. You'd almost give away the subscriptions and make it easy for people to buy on the newsstand so that you can produce more copies to sell more ads. So we were watching these editions, and we knew that there was a point where we just wouldn't be able to put out any more magazines. And I got married in early 2009, and went on my honeymoon, and basically came back, and we had a key investor in the business. We had a board of advisors. My dad was part of that board. My editor Paul Ryan, and they're all just sitting there like, and what's up, guys? And they go, yeah, we just can't put out another magazine. It would just be too dangerous to do so. So we made the announcement that we were going to go 100% digital. We wrote letters to our subscribers. The interesting thing is that most of the subscribers replied and said, "This is fantastic." We even offered to either refund their subscription fees or give them another magazine, because we'd done deals with other magazines where they could get another magazine instead. And a bunch of people replied and said, "No, just go online. This is the future." Everyone was really supportive, except our competitors. Yeah, and we got headlines like Anthill Magazine bites the dust. That's the name of the magazine. Anthill Magazine, latest victim of the financial crisis. It was real. They were really, really mean. One of those articles made my wife cry, and the journalist who wrote that I will never forgive. I will never forgive, because it was such a hatchet job. And yeah, we had to make this decision. And then by mid 2009, we know that we're going online, and we had to sit down and have this really uncomfortable, conversation with the team. Had to make pretty much everyone redundant. Yeah, and at the end of that, walked away. Are you ready? Walked away with $988,000 worth of debt on the company balance sheet. So $12,000 shy of $1 million. Part of me was like going, quick, I should go out and spend $12,000, just for the plot, just for the story. Right. But that was what it said on the balance sheet. And then I had the choice: do we go into receivership? Do I go into administration? What do I do? And had some really good conversations with investors and suppliers, and brokered an amazing number of deals, and said, listen, we're going to push forward online, and I'm not going to file for administration. I'm going to do what I can to pay you back, or we're going to do deals, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. And they're by and large all really supportive with that. And yeah, within about 3 years, I was back on track. And what's also really surprising is that we announced that we were going to go 100% digital. We had no money, right? Probably again another credit card with a bit of money on it, about $1,000 or something. And I invested in a $500 WordPress website, and doubled down on that. And about 5 to 6 months after that, there was an organization called Nielsen Online Ratings, and they were trying to rank the business and finance websites in Australia at a time where there was not that many websites, so you could try and attempt to rank this stuff. And we came in within the top 50 business and finance websites in Australia by traffic. And,
Wow.
and we were beating one of the national newspapers by traffic with our $500 WordPress site. So the wild thing is that there was a period there where I was totally out in the wilderness. Again, I was running the business on my own. It was all online. There was a wonderful period where people were still spending magazine type ad budgets online, but the overheads are just gone. Wonderful little window of time. But I was out, I was trying different stuff, I was consulting. And remember how I said that I got all these terrible headlines that were just super, super mean? I don't know, about 6 months later, I got a phone call from one of the biggest players on the planet that had been so mean in their headlines, and they reached out and they said, "Hey, can you come and do a little bit of consulting to us? We want to know how you pulled this off." And the funny thing is, people say that revenge is best served cold. No, revenge is best served as an invoice, hot off a printer, right? With a bunch of zeros next to it. That's what you want. It's yeah, yeah. So yeah, so that was the first real low point. And that was a tough one. Again, I could go back to false evidence appearing real. There was a lot of evidence that was definitely real, but I said, you know what? If I can negotiate with enough people and do enough deals and put people on payment plans, worst case scenario here is that I get a quarter of the way or halfway through paying off people, and then I slip into administration or receivership. But I never had to. Indeed, it was about 3 years down the line, I sent an email to a printer, the people that print magazines, and it was like, "Hey, I've just paid you my last monthly installment of $500. Thank you for being so patient. I'm sorry that I was such a bad client." And they replied and they were like, "You are the best type of client. We wish we had more clients like you. We think that you're great. Most people would leave us in the lurch, but you paid us back, even if it took you 3 years at $500 a month."
Hey, it's Ryan here. If you liked that video, please click the like and subscribe button somewhere down there and check out the full interview right over here. Go on, click it. You know you want to.